Ahoy! Today we're talking about the balance changes for patch 8.6, which is coming out today, in case you forgot. As always, you can see the new upcoming skins in the background right now, and we'll jump right into the changes. The first thing is the release of Morgan Le Fay. Let's have a very quick look at her abilities. Empowered Blade, her passive, allows her to gain extra power for stacking runes on enemies and also to buff her ultimate. Sigil Mastery is a circle AoE dealing damage in multiple instances and applying additional crowd control effects to them depending on which of the three versions you choose. Dragonfly is a relatively slow self-peel ability which has a knock up and a knock back and works very well at close range and also a little bit at distance. Sword of Wildfire is a projectile that deals initial burst damage and then additional tick damage, and will deal further burst damage if an enemy uses an escape while affected by it. All of these abilities stack her passive as well. Consuming Power, the ultimate consumes the passive stacks, deals additional damage and grows in size with the amount of stacks, and then allows you to fire 3 projectiles while being crowd control immune. You also heal for part of your missing health. Moving on, we look at the other changes of this patch. Copyrighted music can now be muted, which is especially important for content creators. Normal games can now be paused if one of the players is disconnected. Guards that have abilities that allow them to go through player-made walls can now go through the vine walls on the map. The Joust map is being reverted to the classic Joust map for now. The classic Joust map gets a variety of changes though, which you can see here, and also got further changes after PTS, making it so that the damage buff cam becomes enhanced after 7 minutes now, and the buff cams spawn at 0 seconds on the timer. When it comes to item changes, the first one being hit is Benevolence, which will now only provide you with gold once you have left the fountain. So no more cheesy starts with that. The mask tree as a whole gets a bit of an overhaul. The base level mask gets some health and mana increases along with a cost increase, which is mainly a Gilgamesh buff really, because I don't think many people are gonna buy it for the stats. Fighter's mask gets some minor power buffs, and Rangda's mask gets some power buffs as well, while the damage dealt and taken are both decreased from 20 to 15%. Protector's mask gets a health increase too, and Lono's mask gets a 50 health increase, but the damage taken decrease, damage dealt decrease, and healing done decrease are all reduced from 20% to 15%. Transcendence gets a cost reduction from 2,600 to 2,450, which is pretty massive considering that is what most carries are currently opting into already. Death Toll gets its magical power increased from 25 to 30, which will probably not make much of a difference. Emerald Ring now provides you with 5% attack speed, which is probably mainly interesting for Sol because she is the one magical carry that is really coming into the spotlight at the moment. Ring of Hecate had its cost decreased from 2,600 to 2,500, and the magical power increased from 80 to 90. I don't think that's actually going to be relevant because there are other items in Mage ADC builds that provide lifesteal already, so that's not going to be a focus for most of them, I think. And the Vampiric Shroud gets its magical power increased from 25 to 30, and the cost decreased from 750 to 700. This is interesting because Vampiric Shroud has been gaining a lot of popularity as of late already, so that'll push it a little bit further on certain characters, while it'll probably still not be the main choice for most. That brings us to the guards. Athena gets a change to her reach, which actually doesn't change the damage that already happened in the previous patch, but rather just clarifies how it works. Apwash gets very significant buffs. His base health is increased from 400 to 450, and his base physical protection is increased from 9 to 13. In addition to that, Empty the Crypts, his ultimate, has its cooldown decreased from 100 seconds to 90 seconds. Since he's a character without mobility, especially this early increase in defensive stats could be very interesting. It could help him both when in mid lane and getting ganked by junglers, while also helping a little bit in solo lane. Probably not enough to make him a solo laner as such, but definitely an interesting change. Artemis gets a buff to suppress the Insolent, increasing the base damage from 80 to 280 to 90 to 290. So a 10 base damage increase across all levels. This is especially interesting for her early clear, of course. Horus gets a very significant though small looking buff. Fracture has its dash range increased from 35 units to 40 units. This is often exactly the amount that he would need to close the distance for the CC, which sets up his whole combo, so this will make a pretty big difference in my opinion. Yi gets the base damage on Ricochet increased from 75 to 255 to 85 to 265. This is especially interesting for triple bounces and will also affect his camp clear as such. He should have a fairly easy time clearing the purple buff now, and maybe even a decent time playing as a jungler. Izanami gets a very significant buff to her escape, Fade Away, decreasing the cooldown from 20 to 16 seconds to 17 to 15 seconds. So especially on the early ranks, you'll see quite a bit of a difference when it comes to her escape potential. Kumbhakana gets multiple damage buffs. Throwback's damage is increased from 70 to 350 to 90 to 390. This, however, is on the initial hit and not the launch damage on every target after that. So really, on the early rank, it's just evening it out with the rest of the damage, and then it still falls off a little bit. So this one mostly ensures some more damage against other guards, and also makes it so that the minion that is being launched is less likely to survive after going through everyone else. Gorg's Strike, on the other hand, has its base damage increased from 90 to 290 to 90 to 310. So here the early ranks not affected, but later ranks are. If damage alone is enough to make him more viable, or maybe even viable in the SPL, I am not so sure. Mercury is getting a buff to Melee Look, increasing the base damage from 70 to 210 to 80 to 220. Mercury actually has already been picked a little bit in the Pro League, so this buff might just be what gives him a little bit more of a push into viability. The current crit jungle builds most certainly aren't bad for him. Merlin's Dragonfire is changed in how it works with cooldown and now goes on cooldown immediately after firing it instead of at the end of the ability. To offset that a little bit, the cooldown of the ability is increased by 2 seconds, while the ability has a 3-second duration, so overall he has 1 second less cooldown on the ability and is also better affected by cooldown reducing effects now. That's especially true for things like Chronos Pendant or Spear of Desolation. Ironically, Merlin had already been doing pretty well after his buffs. The problem with him is always that he does significantly better in the Pro League than in casual or ranked. Ram is getting multiple buffs. Rolling Assault's scaling on the bonus damage shot is increased from 25 to 30%, which is really not much. But Astral Barrage's base damage is increased from 180 to 520 to 180 to 540. That means basically every shot of this ability is amplified a fair bit. If you were to land all 3 shots on a target, you're looking at 51 extra base damage. And last but not least, Vulcan's Magma Bomb has its base damage increased from 70 to 270 to 80 to 280. Since this is his main poke and combo ability, this could have a little bit of an impact, though I don't quite see it being enough to really bring Vulcan back into the current meta. With this, we basically have the mid-season patch breathing down our neck already, where we can likely expect some more significant changes. If you want to hear about that when it comes out, click like and subscribe so that you'll get notified of that. Short outro for a short video today, hope to see you for the next one soon. ZiSotto, out.